it's hot in here. Hello, Internet. Welcome to another episode of Romney's Reviews. So this film's the directorial debut for Seth MacFarlane, the guy who created Family Guy, American Dad, and The Cleveland Show. Now, I'm not particularly a huge fan of those shows, and frankly, I still don't really understand the existence of The Cleveland Show, all because Time Magazine had to bitch and moan about how there's no ethnic characters in TV, but that's another rant for another time. But point being, the fact that the guy has 3 TV shows, all still going, on a major network, that's pretty huge. I mean, that's a pretty big deal in the TV business. So I'm guessing a lot of people felt that this was a surefire bet in financing this film. It's like, hey, this is Seth MacFarlane. He's a funny guy. He can probably make a very good film. Well, it's good in parts, but as a whole, it's not the best. At least when it comes to Seth MacFarlane's jokes. Now, one of the biggest things with his style is that he relies a lot on pop cultural humor. That's kind of his shtick, especially with a lot of the cutaways and all that stuff. I mean, they've satirized it on Robot Chicken as well. But thing is, with this particular film, the characters grew up in the 80s, and so it really kind of shoves the 80s in your face, making references to old 80s TV shows, and just the amount of jokes they keep layering on to referencing both the 80s and the 90s, it just makes you want to scream at the screen saying, "We get it! They grew up in the 80s. They like Flash Gordon. They idolize Sam Jones. Please move on to a different joke." That's what I felt during part of the theater, particularly with one long scene that just keeps dragging on because you already know what's coming, because the plot is fairly predictable when it comes to the bare bones. Guy has to choose essentially between the loyalty to his girlfriend, the loyalty to his best friend. A bunch of drama ensues. The guy somehow screws up and makes the girlfriend mad at him, begs for a second chance. He gets the second chance, screws it up even further, and it's just that scene where you know the consequences are coming. You're just like, get on with it. Get on with it. We get it. He's partying. Get on with it. Get on with it. Get on with it. That's pretty much been that was my biggest reaction from the film. I mean, there were some really funny bits throughout I found myself laughing pretty hard about, but it dragged quite a bit. I mean, comedy, if you layer on so many jokes, then it's just not that great. And when it comes to this particular film, I think the biggest problem here is that Seth MacFarlane is no longer having to answer to the Board of Standards and Practices. Those are the people that TV studios have to report to when it says like, oh, you can't have this in your show, or you can't show this in your show, stuff like that. They're kind of like the censorship board. And in the case of how censored television is, it required Seth MacFarlane to be clever with his jokes. But with this, it's like he's not even trying. It really isn't. It's just raunchy jokes, one after the other. And it's just, again, with the character of Ted, it just gets to the point where you're also wanting to scream at the thing where it's like, we get it. He's a perverted a-hole teddy bear. We get it. And again, it's just another case of where they just layer on way too much. And it kind of beats you over the head with the fact, it's like, hey, do you get it? He's not limited. Do you get it? This is all crude humor. Do you get it? Do you get it? Huh? And again, those are just the major detractors of the film, is the fact that it's just too much. I mean, with TV shows like Family Guy and American Dad, he doesn't have as nearly much time, and so he actually has to choose which jokes actually work. But here he just figured, oh, here's all these jokes I can never put in Family Guy or any of my shows. Let's just dump them all in here. And it's too much. It really is. The jokes that were the funniest were the ones that were more subtle, at least in my opinion. So there was the Patrick Stewart narrations where, best way to describe it is that Patrick Stewart gives kind of the typical narration of a family film, but then he kind of goes off on his own little tangent. And those were the funniest bits of the film, was at the beginning and at the end. And there were some occasional other jokes that the characters made that were pretty funny, but when you're sitting in a theater for a good amount of time, and you have all the other bad jokes flying at you in addition to the few good jokes, it gets old pretty quickly. If Seth MacFarlane is really looking to be making feature-length films, then this is definitely not a good way to get into it. I mean, granted, there are some really good, funny moments throughout the film, and then the beginning and the ending narrations are, in my opinion, the funniest, but this isn't one of those films that you really need to rush out and see. It just isn't. And, in my opinion, he may as well have just made Family Guy the movie. I mean, Ted pretty much sounds exactly the same as Peter Griffin. It's not like he's even trying to hide it. In fact, he makes fun of the fact that he sounds like Peter Griffin, so... I mean, if he went down the Simpsons route and just did the whole, hey, it's Family Guy the movie, it at least would have been honest about what it was trying to be. I mean, heck, doing a Robot Chicken the movie would probably have been funnier. I know that's Seth Green, not Seth MacFarlane, but you get my point. They may as well just not beat around the bush and yeah. That's all I can really say about it. So on my personal scale, I'm giving Ted well, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5 because it's still a pretty decent film, but you don't really need to rush out and see it. It's not the greatest, but if you are seeing it in a dollar theater or if you're like watching it from a rental service, then there's not really a lot of harm. I must warn you, if you have any kids, do not take them to see this. I mean, it's rated R, so it's kind of a given, but this is just kind of to dissuade anybody who thinks that, oh, it has a teddy bear, it should be funny. Even if it is, it's just, no. If you're taking your kids to see this, you're an idiot. Yeah, I got nothing this week, mostly because, oof. Let's just say school has been kind of kicking my butt throughout the past few months, especially since I'm working as first assistant director for a short film being produced by the college boot camp. It's actually a pretty cool film, and it's a pretty fun idea. It's just, well, being an AD kind of sucks. So, yeah. No funny little anecdotes today. Well, except about this shirt. I don't actually work out at Gold's Gym. My dad just got this from somewhere, I don't know where. It was the only thing I could find because it's almost 100 degrees. I mean, I live out in Utah. The heat gets unbearable. And I can't even have the fan on because of the audio issues. And this light, this friggin' light, it produces a whole lot of heat. It drives you nuts, man. It drives you crazy. Sorry.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man.